Do you guys remember this series? It was released back in 2023, and then the new chapters just stopped coming. But finally, this masterpiece has made a huge comeback. This series starts off with a classic gate opening, monsters flooding in, and regular people suddenly awakening superpowers. You've probably seen it before. These newly awakened folks become hunters, and their job is to hunt down the monsters. Fast forward a decade after this whole gate opening mess, and we meet our protagonist, Kang Ji-hyung. The dude gets slammed by a huge block of diamond. He falls down to the ground and starts bleeding like crazy. He's convinced he's a total loser because, unlike all the bullies around him who've awakened flashy superpowers, all he's got is regeneration. Now on paper, regeneration is an S-rank ability, but for Kang, not so much. Every time he heals, it hurts like hell, and to make things worse, the bullies just keep attacking him, watching him suffer as he regenerates and laughing at his pain. It's just brutal. Once Kang heals, there's not even a scratch left to prove he's been bullied and tortured, so the teachers and police can't do a thing about it. The fact that these bullies are S-rank awakened, they receive all kinds of special treatment from the government, so no one can raise a voice against them. Kang's pretty much stuck in a system that favors the powerful. The reason he is still enduring all this isn't because he's weak. It's because of his mother. You see, his dad died when he was just 5, and now he's grinding his way through this awakened specialization high school just to graduate, become a hunter, and support her. He's been silently suffering, thinking that with his regeneration ability, he could at least become a C-rank hunter. The pay wouldn't be much, but he was hopeful he'd be able to live a better life with his mom, somewhere peaceful, just the two of them. But that dream gets ripped apart on the day of his mother's birthday. That tragic day, he finds out she's been hospitalized after being beaten to a pulp by those same bullies. Now, she's in a vegetative state, and his world shatters in an instant. The investigators call this incident just an accident to twist the story, claiming that those awakened boys just happened to show up at his mom's restaurant. But here's what really went down. One of those jerks grabbed Kang's mom by the hand, trying to show off his diamond abilities and impress her with his flashy powers. She quickly turned away, and in the process, the bully's phone slipped out of the table and smashed on the ground. While Kang's mom was fretting about how she'd pay for the broken phone, that bastard suddenly drilled a hole right through her chest. And now they are just labeling this just as an accident as their abilities just flew into a rage. Hearing that made Kang so furious that he clenched his jaw so hard it started to bleed, and his teeth cracked from the pressure. His frustration was off the charts. He knew this wasn't a coincidence or some rage-fueled accident. This was murder, plain and simple, and in that moment, he transformed into a literal bloodthirsty, broken monster. The cake he had gotten for his mom just splattered on the ground, a heartbreaking reminder of the life he wanted to protect. The scene then shifts to the mountains near the city, where those bullies are chilling out. One of them, with brown hair, is freaking out about what happens if the woman dies. The diamond boy just shrugs it off, saying nobody cares. He jumps off the rock he's sitting on and starts bragging about how they're young enough to be protected by the law. And since they're awakened, no one can take any legal action against them. The brown-haired guy still seems unsure, and that's when the diamond boy gets annoyed, asking if he really thinks that was his first time beating someone up. Right at that moment, our protagonist shows up, and he begins running toward the clowns. They look at him and wonder who the hell he even is. That's when Kang snaps, demanding to know why they did that to his mother. That's when the diamond boy realizes who Kang is, and starts teasing him, saying he didn't know that woman was his mom because she looked pretty young. With a flick of his finger, he drills a long diamond spear right into Kang's chest, casually bragging about how he tried to flirt with her. Kang grits his teeth and starts pulling that massive diamond spear out of his chest. His body begins to regenerate and the pain is excruciating, making his tears stream down his face. Finally, he yanks the spear free, leaving a huge hole that heals up almost instantly. The diamond boy quickly conjures up more of those diamond spears, and with another flick of his finger, sends a barrage of these sharp needles piercing Kang's body from all directions. He's pinned down to the ground, immobile and helpless, as the weight of his pain and anger bears down on him. But Kang quickly fights against the pain, pushing himself forward toward these monsters. His face is a terrifying mess, like a bloodthirsty hound determined to reach them and tear them apart. The diamond boy just laughs at Kang's miserable situation and turns to his friend Thor, telling him to show this brat that he's out of their league. Thor hesitates for a moment, clearly unsure, but eventually decides to use his ability. And as he does, a massive storm of electricity descends from the sky, shocking Kang to his core, and he crashes back down to the ground, head first. A trail of blood left behind marks his struggle as he tried to reach those bastards. They eventually start to walk past him, thinking they've won. That's when Kang, fueled by sheer rage, grabs one of the thugs by the leg and asks the bastards where he is going. The diamond boy has had enough of this brat clinging to them. He solidifies his fist with diamonds and delivers a devastating blow right to Kang's head. He then withdraws his hand and swings back, landing another skull-cracking punch, continuing the beatdown until Kang's face is a bloody mess. Then, the bastard thrusts his diamond fist right into Kang's mouth, leaving him gasping. After that, he calls out to his friend Sandman to start digging. Sandman promptly begins to dig a hole while Kang trembles and curses them. The gum eater asks what they are going to do with him, to which the diamond boy just tells him to shut up. That's when hundreds of diamond shards spring up around Kang, all aimed to cover him up. He curses these bastards as the shards begin to form around him and surrounds him completely. Finally, Sandman shovels dirt over him, sealing Kang in a diamond-made coffin, leaving him trapped in darkness. While trapped inside the diamond coffin, Kang continues to scream the F-word over and over, pounding against the coffin in desperation. But deep down, he knows there's no way he can break free from the diamonds. As the air starts to run out, he begins to suffocate, and eventually, he starts to lose consciousness. But his regenerative ability forces him to stay awake, and each second in that diamond prison becomes a torturous experience. In a fit of desperation, he grabs a sharp diamond shard and thrusts it into himself, but even that doesn't bring death. Instead, painful memories of his mother flash through his mind, reminding him of her struggle and hopelessness. It's a cruel irony. His power to regenerate won't let him die, leaving him trapped in this painful existence. He feels utterly powerless, a soul consumed by despair. Then it hits him that this is exactly how his mother feels right now, truly hopeless and helpless. The thought drives him to the edge, igniting a fire in him, and he starts punching the walls of his coffin, fueled by a desperate hope to break free from this suffering. No matter how long it takes, he's determined to escape. He spends hours yelling and pounding the coffin in front of him, but there's no one in the mountains to hear his cries. Here, we're going to take a pause, and I'll explain how the new version of this comic has changed Kang's regeneration ability to an exoskeleton manifestation ability, which helps him harden his body. Instead of getting stuck in a coffin, the new version introduces the concept of the red gates. When those bastards were bullying him, a red gate popped up, and instead of reporting it to the authorities, they threw Kang inside it. Basically, a red gate is a phenomenon where a gate turns red, and monsters do not come out, though not much else has been revealed about this yet. The reason for this is that no one has entered a blood gate and come out alive. The place is crawling with every kind of nightmare monster imaginable, and Kang fell prey to those monsters. New research has shown that those who enter a blood gate become monsters because of the mana inside. Kang becomes one of the monsters within the gate and tears every other monster apart. That's how he transforms into this badass character. After some time, he finally busts out of the red gate, stronger than ever thanks to this mysterious regeneration ability he got from the red mist. And his exoskeleton also got stronger after getting shredded by monsters over and over. In the older version, it's different, and I'll explain that in a bit. So let's pick up the older version of the story. 5 years have passed since Kang got stuck in the diamond coffin. We see those 3 thugs who locked Kang in that hellhole, and they're being broadcast live on a show. The host calls these bastards selfless heroes who are doing volunteer work for the country. The scumbags claim they feel joy whenever they help those in need, and they still feel that way. The host then asks them about the rumors of their past, specifically that they hurt a civilian 5 years ago due to an ability outrage. Sudden silence fills the stage as the idiot dramatically pauses before bursting into fake tears, claiming that the victim was a close friend's mother. His 2 friends look bewildered, completely thrown off by how he's making this shit all up. Then, the Diamond Boy claims he apologized to Kang but hasn't been able to reach him since. He insists he wants to apologize again and is genuinely sorry for what happened. Just as he says this, the main gate of the stage is flung open, and it comes flying towards the Diamond Boy, who quickly saves himself with his diamond abilities. He feels annoyed as he glares at whoever dared to interrupt his little show. As the mysterious figure steps into the spotlight, panic erupts in the hall, with everyone running for their lives. The monstrous entity begins to walk forward, each step shaking the ground beneath them, and I'm pretty damn sure that this monster is none other than Kang, who is now staring straight at the Diamond Boy, filled with rage and a thirst for vengeance. In that moment, Kang lunges from his place, and before the Diamond Guy can even react, he sees a punch aimed right at his face, ready to give him some serious brain damage. Just as the tension reaches its peak and we're about to witness the bloodbath, the scene transitions back to the time when Kang was still trapped inside that diamond coffin. He's lost all sense of time, with no clue if he's been stuck there for a month or maybe even a year. All he knows is that the diamonds haven't even gotten a scratch. After pounding on those diamonds for what felt like forever, he realizes his regenerative ability is different from others. The continuous injuries trigger an excessive regeneration, and he evolves into a stronger version of himself. His exoskeleton emerges, and inside that grave, he destroys his body over and over again, regenerating each time. He feels every bit of pain as his blood splatters, flesh tears, and bones snap. Yet he keeps ripping himself apart, and the agony becomes worse than death itself. But all that excruciating pain pays off when he finally sees the light of the outside world. In the present, as soon as he lands a punch on that bastard's face, the guy's eyes nearly pop out, and he goes flying, leaving his friends stunned in their tracks as they watch this literal monster attacking them out of the blue. Kang remembers the words those idiots threw at him, challenging him to get out if he could. And here he is now, standing right in front of them, and reminds them that he has finally got them. Surprisingly, the Diamond Boy begins to stand back, and he quickly tells his friends to just kill Kang. The lightning guy, desperate to defend himself, tries to zap Kang with his electricity, but it has no effect on our boy. He merely clenches his jaw, fueled by rage, and launches himself at the lightning guy, cutting his head clean off. The head spins through the air, blood splattering everywhere. The headless guy finally collapses along with his head. The other stupid head then tries to take our boy down. He uses his sand powers to conjure up a bunch of rocks, trying to crush him. But my guy just busts right through those rocks, shaking off the rubble, and grabs this jerk by the jaw. After pinning him to the ground, he swings his fist and boom, blows his head clean off. While that's happening, the Diamond Boy sneaks up from behind and lands a crushing blow right on our boy's head. But unfortunately for this stupid head, his fist just cracks on impact. Desperate, he conjures a whole ton of diamond needles and launches them all at once towards Kang. They pierce right through him, and blood starts leaking out from every nook and cranny. But despite all that, our guy starts to stand up. The diamond guy panics. He quickly turns his whole body into diamonds and starts beating the crap out of him. He's pummeling our boy with everything he's got, just like the old times. He even shoves his fist into Kang's mouth, thinking he's got him cornered. But this time, our guy just clamps down on his jaw, and suddenly, the diamond fist starts to crack under the pressure. My guy then thrusts a sharp bone right into the bully's chest. He's getting desperate as our boy keeps driving that bone deeper. In a last-ditch effort, the bully conjures up a giant diamond spear that bursts from the ground, piercing our boy right in the chest and lifting him about 6 feet off the ground. While Kang was getting lifted up into the air, the bully's hand was still stuck under the jaw and he lost his arm. The once cocky bastard has turned into a scared puppy, and the only thing in his mind right now is to just run away as fast as possible. But sadly for him, he's not going anywhere. Kang grabs one of those same diamond needles and throws it right into the coward's body, pinning him down right there. He starts crawling on the ground, squirming and whimpering in pain as our guy walks toward him. He's begging Kang to stay away, but we all know that no amount of pleading is going to save him now. Our boy begins his torture, and blood spills everywhere when he stabs the bastard with those same diamond needles he was hit with earlier. Once all of those needles are lodged inside his body, he trembles as he asks our boy who he even is. Kang promptly grabs his skull and rips it apart, revealing his full face. And just like that, the bully's mind flashes back to the past. The realization hits him hard when he remembers that this is the same guy he used to torment. Afterwards, Kang goes full force with his revenge, pummeling the life out of this guy. He's relentless, beating him to a pulp without holding back. There's no mercy here. Finally, he shoves his hand into the bully's mouth, and after one last moment, he withdraws his hand, taking the life of the bastard who made his life hell. His revenge is complete. The people who bullied him are dead. The ones who hurt his innocent mother have finally been brought to justice. Now he just stands there, staring at the pool of blood beneath him. And as if on cue, the rain starts pouring down. His mind flashes back to the moment he got out of the coffin. The first thing he did was rush to see his mother, who was still in a vegetative state at the hospital. In the current moment, he screams and cries as the rain pours down around him. Meanwhile, another lively day dawns in the mountains. A massive monster gate stands wide open, and it looks like someone has already taken care of all the monsters that tried to come out of it. The entire adventurer party is amazed that this lady performed so well, especially since she claims it's her first time going this deep into the gate. She just snickers and expresses her gratitude, saying thanks for looking out for them. But then, the thugs' expressions shift from friendly to creepy. They start approaching the lady, grinning sinisterly as they say they're far more grateful to be with her. As they advance toward the lone girl, she trembles in fear. One of the disgusting perverts leers at her, reminding her that no one knows what happens inside the gate, and it could take a month to get out of here. One of the muscle-bound gorillas grabs her hands, creeping closer and saying he's excited to spend that month with her. The lady cries as she hears these heartless men taking advantage of her vulnerability. But before anything can happen, the same gorilla is the first to lose his head. The others turn around to see who just beheaded their friend. Not surprisingly, it's our boy, looking nothing short of a monster. Even the adventurers think they might have left a real monster behind while clearing out the area. They start launching their attacks, but nothing hurts him. All that fire and purple energy just disperses like it's nothing. A guy with a sword lunges at our boy, but as soon as his sword hits those sturdy bones, It shatters into pieces. The man watches helplessly as his shiny sword crumbles, just before he too drops dead. The remaining clowns freak out, questioning whether monsters like this even exist in the gate. But before they can yap any more nonsense, our guy swings his hand, and they lose their heads in an instant. After cutting everyone down, he strides over to the lady, who's trembling and crying her eyes out while he looms over her like a total badass. He looks at her, head raised high, but as the tears stream down her face, she starts thanking him for saving her life. In response, he politely reciprocates the gesture by cutting her head clean off, and she dies instantly. As he stands there, reflecting on his choices, his mind flashes back to that little moment when he had killed the bully. Suddenly, a lady pops up from behind and asks him how he feels now that he's gotten his revenge. She introduces herself as Lee Yuman, the head of Korea's Hunter Association. Kang turns at the sound of her voice and asks how she even knows him. She explains that she's been watching him ever since that incident 5 years ago when his mother got messed up and he was buried underground. Without hesitation, he launches himself at her. His punch barely inches away when she suddenly says she can save his mother. He stops dead in his tracks, but the force of his swing sends debris flying. He asks him what in the hell she is talking about, and she promptly tells him that she can wake his mother up because she's the only S-rank healer around. Kang then asks her how he's supposed to trust her. She reminds him that it wasn't the hospital keeping his mother alive all those years while he was buried underground. Once he hears this, Kang cuts to the chase and asks her what she wants in return. The girl smiles and explains that the problem is the hunters are too strong. Most military forces are no match for them, and there are even hunters stronger than nuclear forces. Thanks to them, the monsters inside the gates have mostly been wiped out, but the gates themselves didn't disappear. Now, without monsters, those gates are being used as pathways, and nations are using them to wage wars with hunters. Even Korea doesn't have enough hunters to fend off the Japanese hunters invading their territory. But now that our boy is here, she believes he's the only one who can handle this. She explains that if they respond to the Japanese with their own hunters, it'll escalate into total war. But a monster like him shouldn't be a problem, so basically, she's asking him to do her dirty work, and in return, she'll save his mother. In the present, that's precisely why he killed that seemingly ordinary girl, because she was Japanese too. Every time he thinks of his mother, he's fueled to take on any job necessary to save her. The scene shifts to Japan. Inside the Prime Minister's official residence, the Big Cheese is addressing his Minister of Defense. He asks if there are any strong monsters lurking inside the gates, to which the secretary replies no. Then, the old man asks if there are any strong hunters in Korea. Again, the secretary says no. And that's when the Prime Minister flips and sternly asks, why haven't their hunters taken over Korea yet? The bald guy you see before you is Prime Minister Ryuzaki Juto, and the secretary quickly apologizes, promising to fix this situation. The old man wants to know what he's going to do, and the secretary insists he'll handle the issues himself. Apparently, the Minister of Defense is also actually Japan's #1 hunter, Iko Kageryu. After that tense discussion with the Prime Minister, he walks off, telling his secretary to prepare his sword right away. The lady asks if he's going to go alone, and he responds positively. She points out that this might come off as rude, but the hunters sent before were all elite, so why not take some backup? Of course, that comment definitely came off as rude, especially since the guy is actually the #1 hunter in the entire country. The lady quickly apologizes for her absurd suggestion. Once he steps through the gate, he walks through the tunnels, cursing the soldiers who died here in this third-rate gate. Suddenly, some monsters jump to attack him, but he slices them left and right while thinking how those bastards got taken down by the creatures like this. As he walks, he notices something odd up ahead, and it's our boy, sitting right on top of a pile of dead bodies belonging to Japanese hunters. The hunter feels a mix of rage and excitement to see a formidable foe. He quickly swings his sword at our boy, but my guy manages to save himself with his bones. This hunter is so full of himself that he feels disgusted at the audacity of a monster trying to block his sword. He then delivers a blow to Kang's chest, using one of his fancy skills, First Moon Slash, that sends our boy sliding across the ground from the impact. He follows up with a second Moon Slash, and his strike slices through our boy, but it's not even enough to cut through his exoskeleton. The hunter goes for a third Moon Slash, but this time, my guy ducks and swings his hand, and just as he's about to take off this bastard's head, the hunter quickly slices through his hand. As the chopped hand flies off, the hunter swings his sword once again, and we find out that his head has been chopped off as well, which just rolls down over the ground. Kang's eyes roll away, and memories of his father flash through his mind. He recalls how his dad was always busy with work but was warm and friendly, something he really appreciated. Tragically, his father passed away saving him. He pushed his son out of the way, and himself got hit by the bus. With his dad gone, their business fell apart, leaving them buried in debt. His mom worked herself to the bone to make ends meet, and whenever he asked if she was having a hard time, she'd smile and say she was okay. Every night he couldn't sleep and cried because he couldn't bear to see his mother struggling and in tears because of him. He thought she shouldn't have to suffer for someone like him. So one day he grabbed a cutter and started to slice his wrist, thinking it would set her free. Just then, his mother walked into the room. When he turned to her, tears streaming down his face, he revealed that he was awakened. At that moment, he hugged her tightly and promised that he was going to become a hunter and make her happy. At least, that's what he thought until she ended up in the hospital. He remembered Lee Yuman's words echoing in his mind. She told him how the balance of the world was broken and that many nations had already been conquered by hunters. She warned him that Japan was their biggest enemy and begged him to become their monster, to hunt down those hunters. In the present, the hunter proudly claims he's Japan's strongest hunter. He sheathes his sword and mutters to himself about how he's already wasted too much time and decides he needs to head to Korea himself. But just then, he's shocked when Kang's skull bites down hard on his foot. He looks at the skeleton and is baffled by how this is even possible. He can tell it has some sort of regeneration ability, but he literally just cut off its head, so how is this happening? While wincing in pain, he quickly grabs his sword and slashes down at Kang's skull again. Afterwards, he uses his moon ability, and suddenly, a pentagram pattern appears right under their feet, and the hunter vanishes from his spot, moving at lightning speed. A bunch of moonlight clones appear, all heading straight for Kang. They unleash the 12th moon slash, obliterating Kang into tiny bits and pieces. The force of the slashes scatters the remnants of our boy everywhere. Bits of him even pop out of the portal, and the final strike was so intense that it destroyed a mountain outside after it got hit by those stray slashes. Even inside the dungeon, the rocks have been cut into blocks. The hunter finally relaxes, moving forward as he drags his bitten leg, muttering to himself about how he didn't expect that creature to bite him. He decides to heal it right away, but just as he's thinking this, a bone thrusts into his other leg. The guy starts sweating as he feels an immense deathly aura coming from behind. Of course, it's our boy, still coming for him. Even after losing all his flesh, Kang isn't about to let this bastard get away. He's here to finish what he started. The hunter grabs his sword once again, unleashing all his fury. But we don't know what happens next, and the scene transitions to the outside of the portal in Japan, where the Prime Minister, along with an entire entourage of hunters, stands by the gate. And these guys aren't just any weaklings. They're the Ministry of Defense's elite hunters, all gathered here. The secretary asks if they really need this many people to handle just one gate. Baldy then reminds her that it's been 3 days since the Secretary of Defense went inside, so he is worried, wondering why he hasn't come back out yet. Just as they're talking, the head of Japan's top hunter falls at their feet, and out pops our boy through the portal. The Prime Minister screams in panic, but his annoying yelling is cut short when a quick slash takes off his head. The scene transitions back to the Korean Hunter Association, where the assistant asks the head of the association if Kang can actually win against Japan's top hunters. Well, the head of the association is already aware of the dangers, so she just smiles and asks the assistant if he's not at least curious about whether Kang is going to win against them or not. Just as she says this, the scene cuts back to our hero, who gets hit by a massive counterattack from none other than the Prime Minister himself. Surprisingly, even after getting his head cut, it just heals back. The force of his punch is so powerful that the ground beneath them shatters into pieces, and the remains of our boy scatter across the area like minced meat. Well, it turns out Japan's Prime Minister, Ryuzaki Juto, isn't weak at all. In fact, he's Japan's number 0, a triple S rank hunter, so there is no brainer that he obliterated Kang with just one punch. Before we dive back into this heated battle, let's take a quick step back in time. Almost 3 years ago, most of the monsters from the gates were subjugated, and the only powerful entities left in the world were the very hunters who saved the world, so the people around the globe started fearing the power of the hunters. A few countries tried to eradicate the hunters, but well, that didn't go as planned for obvious reasons. The hunters around the world either struck deals with their nations to coexist or conquered them outright. And this is how each finds their own way to gain supremacy. Japan was one of the countries that fell to a hunter, and the reason was straightforward. The Prime Minister, who happens to be a triple S rank hunter. He was aggressive even before he awakened, and once the hunter system appeared, he set his sights on taking control of South Korea as well. But his plans hit a snag as soon as our boy stepped up. Even after taking that devastating punch, Kang regenerates back to his former self. As he stands up once again, the hunters who came with the Prime Minister quickly launch themselves at our boy. One of them swings his weapon, trying to behead him, but instead, he ends up getting beheaded himself. The other hunter finds his face crushed in the process. The Prime Minister and his goons can only watch in horror as our guy stands in front of them, totally unfazed. They all get angry, and the Prime Minister grows increasingly aggressive as well, making it clear that anyone who moves from their spot will be killed personally by him. His words hang heavy in the air, leaving everyone stunned in silence. As our boy marches forward toward the Prime Minister, the scene transitions to a cold day with snow falling gently. There, the Prime Minister discovers a young boy out in the streets, shivering and on the verge of freezing. He asks the boy what he's doing out there, but the little one doesn't respond right away. Instead, he looks up at the Prime Minister and asks who he is. In the background, TVs are broadcasting the Prime Minister, but surprisingly, this kid doesn't seem to recognize him at all. That's when Ryuzaki tells him to come with him because it's too cold outside. And just like that, he takes the boy under his wing. As they walk, Ryuzaki asks the kid his name, and the boy replies, Kageryu. This is the same Kageryu our boy killed in the gate. Seeing the head of his most cherished child absolutely enrages the man. In a flash, he delivers a punch that sends Kang flying. But Ryuzaki isn't done. He follows up with a barrage of punches, each one more devastating than the last, until Kang's head is blown clean off. As our boy falls backward, his brain and head destroyed, Ryuzaki unleashes a terrifying power that burns and obliterates everything in its path. Kang is reduced to nothing but a pile of bones, and everyone praises the Prime Minister for his stellar performance, which is something that was already expected of him. He extends his hand to grab the head of his child, but before he can reach it, we see our guy piecing himself back together, even after being obliterated into bones and dust. The Prime Minister's eyes widen in shock, and his mind flashes back to the past, where we see countless dead bodies of other hunters. The one who finished them off is the same kid, Kageryu. The Prime Minister apologizes for making him do such dirty work, but Kageryu reassures him that it's all right. He's just glad that Japan is finally in their grasp. That's when the Prime Minister mentions their plans to take over South Korea and China as well, so he reminds him that he might die next time, and if doesn't want to fight, he can quit. But Kageryu quickly reminds him that he was the one who took him in when he was dying in the cold, so he intends to repay that debt for the rest of his life. However, there's one thing he requests from the Prime Minister. He wants to call him father. The Prime Minister calls him close-minded and reminds him that it goes without saying that he is his son by now. In the present, the atmosphere has become unbearably tense, and the ground beneath everyone's feet turns to lava due to the Prime Minister's uncontrollable anger. One of the hunters, a lady with ice powers, quickly freezes the ground because she does not want to get incinerated with this scorching lava. She shouts out to the Prime Minister, who's completely lost control. He no longer resembles a human. Instead, he looks more like a terrifying creature made of fire, who is literally melting everything around him as if it were butter. But my guy is just cool as cucumber, and he begins to take confident steps forward. The mountain becomes a volcano which is on the verge of erupting, and as we speak, it erupts right away. The Prime Minister has fully transformed into an abomination, a being of pure magma, ready to melt everything and everyone into ashes. With a single gesture, he unleashes scorching flames that start to incinerate our boy. His flesh disappears, burning away, but he still leaps from the ground toward this bastard. The Prime Minister unleashes even more magma from the ground, and it starts burning away Kang's bones. The whole place descends into chaos as the other hunters retreat in panic, desperate to save their own lives. The sheer heat and destructive power turn the entire mountain into a massive, lava-covered volcano. Finally, Ryuzaki begins to calm down, silently watching as Kang is swallowed by the volcano he created. But despite being consumed by the lava, Kang's mind is still fixated on reaching Ryuzaki. The Prime Minister knows this isn't over yet, so he summons Hanami, the ice-powered lady. She promptly appears, removes her glove, and begins cooling the surface of the lava, forming a solid layer to trap Kang beneath it. As the surface hardens, Ryuzaki bids a final farewell to Kang, telling him to melt forever underneath the lava. The scene then transitions to South Korea at the Kyum Kang Guild. There, we see a lady trying her hardest to heal a particular hunter, and this hunter is the same guy who messed with Kang's mother and ended up getting his ass wiped out. But it looks like he hasn't kicked the bucket just yet. Things on the mountain have finally started to calm down, and the Prime Minister tells his hunters that only the highest ranked ones will stay, while the rest must return. Everyone agrees, and meanwhile, we see Kang's hand pushing through the solidified layer of molten lava, violently moving around. He's thinking to himself about how these fools are messing with lava like it's a big deal when, to him, it's just a tickle. You see, inside a Bloodgate, he experienced heat tens of thousands of times more intense. If you're not aware of these red gates, I will remind you that the creators of this comic actually changed his abilities in the new serialization of the comic. In this version, he gets stuck inside the Bloodgate, where he goes through torture and stuff by the monsters in the gate. Personally, I preferred the old origin story for his powers. What do you think? Which version did you like the best? Let me know in the comments. Though even though this fire is nothing to him, Still, the pain is unbearable as always. But he has to go through this regardless. Eventually, Kang breaks through the tough ceiling of dried lava, leaving Hanami completely boggled. She can't believe her eyes as he literally crawls his way out from the depths of hell. The Prime Minister is sure by now that shit is about to get real, so he tells Hanami to gather the other hunters and find somewhere safe to hide. She glances back at Kang, and can understand why the Prime Minister is sweating his balls. Then, the Prime Minister jumps down into the volcano itself, landing right beside our boy. The scene then transitions to the past in Japan, where Hanami is asking him why he is overexerting himself, reminding him that magma regeneration is not omnipotent. The Prime Minister responds by telling her that among the 4 great hunter nations, which follows as USA, China, Russia, and Japan, Japan is the weakest. He fears that if they can't absorb South Korea, Japan might not survive. Hanami hugs his muscular arm tightly, trying to comfort him. She reminds him that many of their hunters will die in the process, but the Prime Minister makes it clear that he'll fight himself if he has to. He's ready to sacrifice his own body if it means protecting his country. With that determination in mind, the Prime Minister punches the ground so hard that Kang is thrown back by the sheer force. He then quickly charges his fist with immense power and delivers a punch so massive that Kang is sent crashing into the volcano wall and shatters it in the process. Ryuzaki doesn't let up, continuing his relentless barrage. As Kang is thrown around, he regains his balance, but the Prime Minister throws yet another massive wave of fire at him. The flames hit their mark, severing Kang's hands and flinging his body away. Prime Minister just doesn't stop there. He leaps into the air and comes crashing down like a goddamn meteor, causing the entire mountain to shake with his godlike impact. Meanwhile, Hanami reaches the other hunters and urgently reports that the Prime Minister has ordered an evacuation. Despite the danger, she declares that she will remain behind to support him, but the other hunters refuse to follow her command. They apologize to her and insist that they won't abandon the Prime Minister. They owe him too much for the help he's given them, and they are prepared to lay down their lives to protect him until the very end. It's then that they address her as the Prime Minister's wife. On a side note, it's probably a good thing they updated the Prime Minister's appearance from a jacked-up old man to a younger version, because the idea of him having a wife who could pass as his daughter would have been pretty awkward. Back in the heart of the volcano, the battle rages on. Ryuzaki is relentlessly pushing Kang deeper and deeper into the molten depths. At one point, Kang's entire body is incinerated, reduced to nothing, but, as you might expect, he begins to reform again, and soon, he's crawling his way out of the volcano once more. Kang suddenly leaps toward Hanami, which leaves the Prime Minister absolutely fuming. Kang, on the other hand, grabs her freezing hand and he immediately begins to freeze as well. But despite that, he drags her down into the volcano with him. The other hunters quickly jump into the volcano to join the fray. Ryuzaki does not waste his time either, and prepares a devastating counterattack. In the blink of an eye, he slashes off Kang's arm and pulls his wife close, trying to protect her. But Kang manages to slice off Ryuzaki's head in the process. The head begins to fall, though it remains connected to the body through Ryuzaki's magma powers. But my guy does not let this golden opportunity go. He grabs Hanami's hand, the one with the ability to freeze anything by touch, and forces her to touch her husband's head. Before we see Ryuzaki's head freezing, Kang finds himself shattered into pieces by the other hunters, his body broken and his head falling away. The other hunters ask Hanami if she is okay, but her mind is occupied with the thoughts of her husband's well-being. She starts to tear up when she realizes that she has frozen her own husband's head before it could attach back to his body. To hit the last nail on the coffin, Kang steps on that ugly head, shattering it into pieces. A wave of despair washes over them when they realize that this monster is still alive. In the next moment, he dashes forward with incredible speed, slashing through everything in his path, leaving Haname in tears as she watches her comrades dropping down like dead flies. Now it's finally her turn to lose her head. In her final moments, her eyes begin to close, and she senses her head falling away. In that instant, memories flood back, and she gets flashbacks of the time she spent with her husband. Moments filled with joy and love. But as her head falls, those pleasant memories twist into horror, marking the loss of everything she held dear. With her consciousness fading, she reaches out to touch her own head. And at that very moment, she freezes herself entirely. A tragic end to her beautiful life shared with her husband. Limbs are scattered everywhere, and there is no one left alive except for our boy. He finally climbs out of the volcano and decides it's time to head back to Korea. The scene then transitions to South Korea, inside the Kyum Kang Guild's monostone storage room. There, we find Tae-soo, that same sucker we love to hate, pushing himself hard to get stronger. This lady, whom I don't know the name of, warns him not to overdo it, reminding him that he was the only one with mana left, which is why he barely survived while his friends are already pushing up daisies. Tae-soo acknowledges the harsh truth. He admits that he remembers everything clearly. More than that, he recalls how the brat he used to bully back in school days escaped the blood gate and killed him and his friends. It seems they've changed Taesu's powers too. The stones he's conjuring up, which used to be blue, now radiate red color. We then also learn that he is the guild master of Kyum Kang, an S-rank hunter known as Han Tae-soo. Fueled by revenge against Kang, he instructs the lady to release the seal that's been holding him back. A while later, we see her totally exhausted, panting heavily as she tries to catch her breath. But despite her fatigue, she delivers the good news that the seal has been broken, and he is now free to unleash his terrifying powers. Taesu commands her to assemble the members of the Kyum Kang Guild immediately. Once they gather in the assembly hall, he stands on the stage, and everyone bows their heads in respect. They express their disbelief that he had been presumed dead, but now that he's alive, they're eager to follow his every order. The head of the Kyum Kang's intelligence team, an S-rank hunter named Han Kung-chan, reports to his master that Kang has moved to the gate following the massacre in Japan. Before Kung-chan can say more, Taesu grows impatient and simply orders them to kill that bastard. Han acknowledges the command, swearing on their lives that the entire intelligence team will carry out the order. But just as he finishes his pledge, Taesu just chops off Kung-chan's head, leaving the other members stunned in their tracks. As he holds the chopped-off head of his junior, we learn that Taesu has already absorbed the Korea Hunter Association 3 years ago. Taesu then kills another guy by twisting his limbs apart, and the body explodes, showering blood everywhere. The scene transitions to the past, where a girl asks him if removing the seal is necessary since his ability is cursed. Well, we all know his answer pretty well. In the present moment, he starts killing everyone in sight, and it's one hell of a massacre. The members of the guild run for their lives, but it's all in vain. Taesu literally kills all 1,528 members of the guild, and absorbs their powers into himself. He's going crazy as he absorbs this overwhelming energy, while the lady just sinks into despair, asking why he has to do this. That's when Taesu reminds her that Kang killed the triple S rank prime minister, so he's sure that even after absorbing all these hunters, it still won't be enough to fight him. He's determined to kill Kang at all costs and is planning to go to Russia to gain even more power. The scene then transitions to a port where we see Lee Yuman, who promptly welcomes Kang as he steps out of the gate. Next, the scene cuts to the hospital, where Kang's mother is. We learn that Yuman has started the procedure to heal her. She uses her S-rank healing ability to restore damaged cells one by one, channeling her mana into the process. She performs this procedure every day since it consumes a lot of mana, so it's going to take some time, but she's confident that she can save his mother. Once she finishes her usual healing session and steps out of the ward, she mentions that if she keeps this up every day, his mother will wake up by next week. Yuman then plops down to the ground from extreme exhaustion, and Kang can tell that this is costing her an extraordinary amount of mana. He's curious about why she's putting her health on the line for this. She grabs his hand as she is sweating profusely, and insists that he has to survive. Right at that moment, green energy begins to shimmer as she holds his hand, but Kang quickly yanks his hand out of her grasp. On the other hand, the girl seems to figure something out, which is that Kang's beastification has progressed significantly within the blood gate. She reveals that ever since the gate first appeared 15 years ago, all other gates have slowly turned into blood gates. Since Kang escaped one of the red blood gates, the change started to accelerate. As a result, all the gates worldwide are turning into blood gates, and the mana flowing from them is giving him strength. In terms of mana flow, if a regular gate is a hole, then a blood gate is a passage connected to somewhere, and something is coming through it. That something is looking for Kang. Right on cue, terrifying creatures start popping out of those red gates, and everything descends into chaos as everyone begins to lose their minds. It's just a massacre everywhere. The scene then shifts to the office of the President of South Korea, where the entire presidential building is covered by a shield. Inside, the president is freaking out, demanding to know why the Kyum Kang Guild isn't answering them. The assistant beside him grimly explains that the guild has been annihilated. The president gasps in disbelief, asking why. The assistant admits he's not sure. He then asks the president if they should request help from overseas. But the big cheese shoots that down, saying it would be like inviting self-destruction. He instructs his assistant to declare martial law first, but the assistant replies that the military can't do anything against those monsters. The president reminds him that it's still better than doing nothing, especially since Kyum Kang Guild was not the only ace up their sleeve. He explains that they have other hunters too, and they belong to Korea's second-ranking guild, Dosa Guild. The first A-ranker is John Woo-jin, and the lady beside him is Kang Se-hee, who's also an A-rank. Then there's Korea's third-ranking guild, known as Vinyl Guild. Their top A-ranker is a guy called Vinylman, while the lady is a shooter known as Superwoman. As for Korea's fourth-ranking guild, that's the Yang Hak Guild. They have an A-ranker named Yang Hak and another A-ranker, Nam Junyoung. As we speak, these hunters are already working together to fend off the terrifying monsters coming through the gates. But it looks like I wasted my breath introducing this bunch of hobos for no reason. Because these idiots have already been defeated, crushed by just a palm of the monster's hand. We also see our boy there, and he asks Yuman, since these monsters are appearing because of him, does that mean the deaths of these hunters are on him too? Yuman just looks at him and asks what he intends to do about it. At that moment, we spot a girl on the road, about to get crushed by a giant monster's palm just like everyone else. But, as expected, our guy literally slices that monster in half and saves the damsel in distress right away. It looks like Yuman now has her answer to the question she asked him about what he intends to do. Kang then reveals that when he died inside the Blood Gate, the gate's mana tried to turn him into a monster. He barely endured it and ended up with an abnormal regeneration ability, or so he thought. It turns out he did not get any regeneration abilities, but the mana just won't let him die until he becomes a complete monster himself. He clenches his jaw in frustration as he recalls how he's finally trying to live a peaceful life after taking care of his mother. But now these monsters have started to meddle in his life. He grabs one of the monsters and tears it to shreds. As he's ripping the monster apart, we enter the place where all the red gates are connected. Inside, we hear a voice asking if this boy is the one who caused the crack. This curious voice belongs to a terrifying undead creature with nothing but bones and no flesh. But before we can learn anything about this mysterious being, the chapter ends. Don't worry though, as soon as new chapters drop, I'll be here to narrate them for you as quickly as I can.